Welcome to the third round of the Manitoba Cup, the St. Lazare Outlaw Scramble. You'll notice at the beginning of this video that it's not actually the beginning of the race, and that's because I forgot to turn the camera on for the first couple of minutes, so we're going to start right in the middle and right in the mix of it, as things are a little bit messy here and everybody's tangled up a little bit, but it's a good place to start. It's kind of a little bit unfortunate that I didn't get this start on film, as it was probably my best start of any of the races I've done so far. I ended up entering into the bush in 4th or 5th. Usually I'm dead last or very close to dead last, but I got a good launch on this one. It was kind of a fun start with I believe they called it a reverse cowboy. Sat backwards on the bike until the horn went, and then you turned around, hopped around, started her, and headed out. But it was good fun, and got off to a pretty good start. For this race, there were 3 of us that came out from Saskatoon, or 3 families came along, and this is the first race that all 3 of us have been in together, and it's always fun to compete with people that you ride with. There's a bit of a funny story as we head up here into the first hill. One of the individuals from Saskatoon, who's not going to be named here, as you can see him in the video, is working his way up the hill, and he gets stuck here. As I try to go by, what I think happens here is that my bike ends up hooked on the rear of his, and I end up rolling backwards and ending up very upside down on this hill. As you see later on in the video, we have a short discussion about who pushed who off of a cliff to impede my progress, but that aside, I do have to give a big shout out to this individual. I don't know who it was that stopped to help me, but I'd probably still be at the bottom of that hill or tied up in these trees if he hadn't come along and offered me a hand. If you do know who it is, let me know so I can thank him in person. As for now, I'll just identify him as Troy Lee. This is the first running of the St. Lazare event, and I gotta say that the track was in amazing condition. It was a lot of fun. Still a lot of overgrowth there, but it was nice to be on a bit of a cleaner path that wasn't so beaten out. Lots of rocks sticking out, lots of uphills, downhills. It pops up out of nowhere in Manitoba. There's kind of flatland all around there and a little bit of bush, but then you get here and it's just, not sure what valley it is, but it's deep and it's tall and beautiful to look around in. It's really great scenery to be racing around in. And tight, very tight.
Very hard. The second time you've caused me to back up. That first one cost me like 5 minutes. My bike went right upside down. Where? Off the cliff. He pushed me when I went by. You were leaning your bike over and all of a sudden my bike got pushed off the edge.
I don't know what to do to get out of here. My throttle is 100% stuck.
I'll come back for you.
We both know that's not true. The only way I'm coming back is if it's on the second lap. It's nice to have friends from home you can bring along and egg on. They can egg you on a little bit, help drive up the competitive spirit, and you really hope the best for them, as long as the best is about a minute or 2 behind you at the finish line. This recording is of the Saturday race. There was intended to be a Sunday race as well, but there was a gigantic storm overnight, and I think the trail would have been impassable for all but the very best of the riders. It was an interesting format in that we raced it one direction one day, and we were going to reverse the direction the other way. Would have been an interesting course. A lot of guys were thinking it'd be a lot harder going the other direction, but I'm not entirely sure. There were some pretty interesting downhills and some pretty interesting uphills, but I think it kind of swapped pretty well one direction to the other, and really is good 2 courses in one. And what we have coming up here in a minute is a very unfortunate event for myself. I get to the end of the first lap there and I make a little bit of a bad choice. I come up to the gate here, and what we do is we pull up to the gate here is that we decide to go right instead of left, and I end up doing an entire loop on the sportsman loop because reasons. And now, for good measure, as we come around from the sportsman loop, we get up to the gate again, and once again, reasons.
Kind of. I jumped from 10th to 1st, and I think I ended up on the wrong loop.
Go back to the big loop.
How do you get back there?
This guy here. Hey, Dad. Another guy for the big loop.
Now what I'm going to do is draw your attention to our friendly medic here, and the phrase that he uses, another guy for the big loop. Another guy. So I'm not the only one that made this mistake. In hindsight, looking at the video, it is absolutely painfully obvious which way I should have gone. You can see the signs there that say long circuit and short circuit, I believe, but it does make it a lot harder to place well when you go for a little jaunt in the middle of your race. But I suppose this is a perfect case of fool me once, so shame on whoever shamed should be shamed, and we'll continue on with the race here. As you can see, as the race progresses, we spread out quite a lot, and it gets a lot easier to make better choices as you're not tied up with the Carnage, and people aren't stuck in as many bad spots. You don't have to go around them offline and climb in already difficult spots and find even more difficult ways to get around them. It does speed you up quite a lot. What you find here for the next minute or two is a little bit of a new situation for me. I've recently switched on to a full dirt bike. I'm now riding a CRF 250X. No longer on a street legal bike. Just decided that this would be a lot easier, but it also makes things like passing a possibility, and that's an interesting change. It's quite a positive feeling, and I'm enjoying it. And though I have to say that the things like actually passing people have been a great joy, truly the things that makes the biggest difference when switching down to a smaller bike is just that it's so much less weight to wrestle around, and particularly when you dump the bike, that you're not just absolutely exhausted every time you have to pick it up. They're infinitely easier to ride. It'd be interesting to see what some of the better riders could do if throwing on a bike like that. I have no doubt they'd finish the course and do reasonably well, but I don't think most people appreciate just how much another 20 or 30 pounds on a dirt bike can make a difference. And especially if the weight's carried higher up in the bike as opposed to lower down, and then you chop off another 4 or 5 horsepower, and it does make for a very difficult ride. But that being said, it also forces you to develop good habits, so I'm hoping that those will transfer into the newer bike and we'll be able to be a little more competitive here.
Because I went down and did the sportsman loop.
I'm so friggin' tired, I had to stop and take a rest because I drove off the track once simply because I didn't turn. I think it's just fatigue. So I kind of figured I'm just gonna take her nice and easy, not die.
I think Tim's onto something there with that strategy. Of course, I immediately ignore that advice and run over a tree trying to blow through the next corner without stopping. As we're discovering very quickly in these races, the key to being fast is not being fast. You have to take your time and not make crashes. The time that you lose when you're picking up your bike, the fatigue that you pick up, and you just make more and more mistakes as your fatigue piles up and your brain just stops working and your body stops working. You just have to be smooth. That's the real key here. It's much more enjoyable, but you really have to be disciplined to do well in these. And being a little lucky from time to time doesn't hurt. And new tires. New tires are key for when you stall out in the worst possible place. And being a little overweight, so that you have a little more traction when you stall out in the worst possible place.
No cheering? Said no cheering?
Just wanted to take a second to thank all the volunteers that go throughout the course to make sure that we're not too wrapped up in a tree or too upside down on a rock, making sure that we're having a good time and cheering us on as we go. It's a lot of fun seeing you guys there, and I know you guys are there for predominantly safety reasons, but it's also fun just to be cheered on, to have people watching you. Makes the events seem bigger and a lot more fun. As I record these events, I've got the camera mounted on top of my head. And surprisingly enough, it stays in place fairly well. I haven't had it knocked around too much, although if you saw the last video, you saw that I got knocked sideways on the last lap. Near the end of this race, I did catch a little bit of a twig, and it tweaked the camera down a little bit. And, you know, at first it was a little bit of disappointment that it wasn't trending forward, but it actually turned out to be kind of a neat thing. It wasn't through one of the particularly bumpy sections of the course, but I just threw about 10-15 seconds of the video in there with the camera pointed more down. It's not straight down, but you just have an idea of how active the front end is on the bike. It's hard to see the little details in the pathway in the videos. You don't see the little rocks and how hard you have to work to keep that bike straight. I don't have a stabilizer on, and maybe that's obvious in the video, maybe that's not, but it does take a lot of effort to keep these things straight as we go, and I'm sure anybody that was there could tell you that. As we get to the end of the video here, I'd just like to thank you for coming along for this ride. I'm not sure whether you clicked forward or watched through the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I guess we'll see you after the next video. There's a few seconds here left worth watching.
Let's leave this here.
For sale.
I'm done.
Going cheap.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably not valid.
You did a few short laps.
That free short lap was the way to go.
And you still ended up in second.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. How'd it go?
Awesome.
This is a good track.
How about you? How'd you make out?